It is Mental Health Awareness Month. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And I want to talk about today 4 steps to improve your mental health. And, you know, in recent years, there's been a lot more discussion about mental health, which I'm so happy about because it's something that's impacting everyone. And so many young people are affected by this. You know, 70% of teens say that anxiety and depression is a major issue amongst their peers. And in 2020, we saw the number of U.S. adults dealing with symptoms of anxiety and depression go up from 10% to 41%. I guess that's like a 400% increase. It's wild. So many people are affected by mental health struggles specifically. And of course, suicide is the second leading cause of death among young people. And so we can't talk about these issues enough. And as Christians, a lot of times there's unhelpful teaching we hear. We can hear things like that mental health issues are just caused by demons. We can hear that mental health issues are just caused by a lack of faith. We can hear that mental health issues are just caused by not reading your Bible enough or praying enough. But those things actually aren't biblical because that's not what we see in the Bible. We see so many different things, which I'll be talking about today, about what leads to mental health challenges in people's life. And I think it's worth pointing out too that the term mental health isn't reserved just for those struggling deeply with their mental health. It's not just for those who've been diagnosed with a mental health issue like anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, OCD, because mental health is the state of one's psychological and emotional well-being. It's the state of one's psychological and emotional well-being. And so we all deal with mental health just like we all deal with physical health. And day to day, our mental health fluctuates just like our physical health fluctuates. And so even things like stress, even things like sadness, discouragement, all of those things are affecting your mental health. Things like being overwhelmed, things like being so mentally taxed because you've had such a draining week. That is your mental health being affected. And for me, I grew up dealing with so many mental health challenges. I was so stressed. I was on alert each day. My nervous system was on alert because of the environment I grew up in with a father who was physically and emotionally abusive and a mom who didn't intervene. And so early on, I was constantly on alert, stressed. I felt it all throughout my body, thinking, when's the next time I'm going to feel rejection? When's the next time I'm going to be yelled at, mocked, or abused? And early on, I was diagnosed with anxiety, depression, and obsessive compulsive disorder. And I didn't really understand what those things were about. I thought they were simply just biological issues I was born with. But the more and more I dived into neuroscience and the Bible as I got older, I started to realize that I had been conformed to the pattern of this world. These patterns of fear, of depression, of just things outside of the Garden of Eden that I was never meant to experience. My brain had been wired to always be on alert, trying to protect myself. And then I learned that I could be transformed by the renewing of my mind. As an adult, I didn't need that fear system in my brain constantly going off. I didn't need this radar always going off, seeking to protect me, because I was no longer in danger. And the Bible helped me realize that. And of course, neuroscience and good therapy as well. But the Bible reveals so much more than we often talk about when it comes to mental health. And so I'm going to share 4 steps today to improve your mental health. And these are 4 of 8 steps that I have in a guide. There's a guide you can get totally free at resolutionmovement.org/2025. And it's the 8 steps to improve your mental health. Totally free. I think it will really encourage you. It's a guide you can download, and I'm going to be discussing 4 of those steps today. And these are 4 steps I've seen help me in my own life. They're 4 steps I've seen so many other people benefit from. And so really try implementing these, and I think they'll really encourage you. And so the first one is we need to rethink protecting our mental health. We need to rethink protecting our mental health. You know, you may have heard the phrase protect your peace, or maybe you've adopted this mentality of I need to do whatever it takes to care for my mental health. The problem is we're actually designed to grow our capacity for handling stress. We're designed to grow our capacity for facing challenges and healing from what holds us back. You know, as the Bible says in Romans 5, suffering produces endurance, character, and hope. In Proverbs 27:17, one man sharpens another as iron sharpens iron. If you know anything about resistance training, weightlifting, that strengthens our muscles. The more and more we push ourselves, push our muscles, and our muscles get sore because they're growing and getting stronger, just as that happens physically, so life's stressors can strengthen our mental health, even down to a neurological level. It's been found in studies that avoidance of our fears actually strengthens our fears. It causes more and more fear. It causes that fear to get worse. But when we face the situation that we fear, when we face it and learn that we can handle it, actually our fear of that situation starts to diminish. Avoiding stressors increases our mental health struggles and our lack of resilience. But exposing ourselves in small doses to our fears and learning that we can handle it and calming our minds and our bodies actually strengthens our mental health. One of the leading theories that has helped me is called, or with overcoming anxiety, is called exposure therapy. And it's this idea that you build a hierarchy, like a list of 1 to 20 of things that you fear that produce anxiety. And number 1 is going to be something very simple that doesn't produce much anxiety. And then number 20 would be something that you can't even dare imagining right now because it would produce so much anxiety. And so for me, an example would be speaking to large crowds, large audiences. That can produce so much anxiety in my life. But then throughout the years, you know, what I've done is practice speaking to a couple of people or at an office meeting. And the more and more I've done that, I actually don't fear that anymore or really think about it. I think about 8 years ago when I used to have to present to about 30 people in the office. That would produce a lot of anxiety for me leading up to it. I'd feel it throughout my body. I'd be overthinking it, worrying what would happen. And then even I'd get up there and I'd feel it in my body. I'd be in this kind of minor state of fight or flight. But the more and more I went into that, did that, faced the fears, told myself the truth. I can handle this. God is with me. And I focused on people and encouraging them and speaking to them. And I got the focus off, you know, myself and all the sensations and the worries I was having and focusing on other people and the message I was giving. You know, now I don't even get anxious when I go up and speak in front of 30 people. And so that's the brain rewiring. That is exposure therapy at work. That is rather than avoiding fears, facing the fears and not having this mentality of protecting my peace and coddling my mental health at all costs. I mean, yes, we want to be diligent. We want to care for our mental health reasonably, but we don't want to avoid any and every situation or person that we think will threaten our mental health. We want to learn and practice that we can't control everything externally, but we can control everything internally. We can learn to control what is happening inside us and to calm ourselves and to overcome fears. The second step to improve your mental health is to filter your inputs and outputs. Filter your inputs and outputs. Man, this one is so important. You know, we need to think about the media we're consuming. the music we're listening to, the music, the podcasts, the shows, the news, the movies, even social media. Is that increasing stress and fear in our life? Or is it helping reduce stress and fear in our life? Is it causing us to think about things we don't need to be thinking about? Or is it helping us? I think so often we can get addicted to social media and be addicted to these constant dopamine hits. And then that can just drive anxiety in our life. That can drive us to constantly want those dopamine hits and to have trouble focusing and being present and having a clear mind. We need to filter the information we're consuming and how much time we're using media and screens. Also, a big thing is thinking about what you're thinking about. Do you think and ruminate on everything that comes into your mind? Or do you see yourself as in control of your mind? That you can choose to not dwell on the things that come into your mind. That you can think about what you're thinking about and choose what you want to think about. Are you taking your thoughts captive, as 2 Corinthians 10:5 says? Do you redirect your thoughts when things come up? When fear comes up, do you think about things that are true, noble, right, pure, lovely, and admirable? Or are you just allowing every single thought, every single fear, every single worst case scenario to come into your mind and then ruminating on it over and over? You can be in control of your thoughts and your intrusive thoughts. Your thoughts are not you. You can take them captive. You can gently redirect to what you're thinking about, and you don't have to fear those thoughts coming into your mind. We're all prone to cognitive distortions. It's this faulty thinking, inaccurate thinking, faulty perceptions or beliefs. And some of the most common, according to psychologists, are overgeneralizations, all or nothing thinking, black or white thinking, catastrophic thinking. Oftentimes we're thinking about the worst case scenario and we're trying to protect ourselves from that, but it doesn't come true. Mind reading, this is assuming what other people are thinking about us. And blaming ourselves, blaming other people when we don't know the whole story. A lot of times we assume and think that our thoughts are true, yet they are lies. And I wonder how many times we have so convinced ourselves that our thoughts are true when they're lies, that we're living out of these lies, that we're not even questioning them, that we're not even living in reality the way we can be. And then the last thing on this, second to last thing, think through what recharges your batteries. This is so important because I think so many people are just working for the weekend. They're just going at such a fast speed and they're just trying to keep up and they're so stressed out and busy and they're not thinking, what do I actually need? How can I slow down? What do I need to do throughout the week so as to not be constantly burnt out and exhausted? It could be hobbies. It could be aspects of your job that you want to focus on more. It could be relationships. Like for me, I know I have to hang out with people at least 3 or 4 times a week outside of work, just friends, in order to stay mentally sane, to stay healthy and recharged and rejuvenated and have conversations with people and talk about what's going on in my life. I need that. Think about what makes you feel truly rested and ready to take on life's challenges. Identify what you can prioritize in your life so that your batteries are recharged. We need to be sure to prioritize this and self-care in our life. Self-care is less about vacations, treating yourself, nice dinners, and it's more about developing a life that you don't regularly have to escape from. It's about this life that you don't regularly have to escape from, a life that is manageable, a life where rest is built in, a life that sets you up well to go the long haul and to have good mental health in your life. Second thing is to filter your outputs. Evaluate the priorities you have in life. where you spend your energy. Think about your spiritual life, your relationships, your career, your hobbies, your serving opportunities. Are you doing too much and stretching yourself thin? For example, maybe you are serving on multiple teams at your church or at your job. You just agreed to help your neighbor move, and then your friend asked if you want to get coffee tomorrow morning, and you're also meeting up every Monday morning at 6 a.m. for a Bible study on top of many other commitments you have in life. Are you doing too much? Just because you have the time doesn't mean you have the emotional and relational capacity to do these things well. Setting limits is liberating. We see this in the life of Jesus, like how often he withdrew to the wilderness to get away, to pray, to be rejuvenated. Even when there was more ministry to do. We see that in Luke 5. Jesus prioritized both his inputs and outputs. And so may we learn from his example. May we be wise with what we commit to. May we be open to the idea of scaling back on things that we're currently committed to in order to have a sustainable life. Think through what things you're doing that aren't essential and scale back from them. You can't do it all, nor were you intended to. And you can't please everyone. You can't make everyone happy. So seek to live within your limits. Step number three, is to identify and reverse unhelpful mental health cycles. Identify and reverse unhelpful mental health cycles. What's interesting is that so many of the times we end up in such a deep state of depression or anxiety or stress or burnout, that those experiences can be traced back 30 steps or more. It's kind of similar to brushing our teeth in the morning. So often our brains are going on autopilot, but think about all the steps involved in brushing your teeth. It's like you get up, you get out of bed, you put on your slippers, you walk down to the bathroom, you look for the toothbrush, you pick up the toothbrush. Oh, you got to turn on the lights, by the way. You turn on the sink. If you're one of the normal people who gets your toothbrush a little bit wet before putting the toothpaste on, think about all of those steps involved in just brushing your teeth. So often we're doing that on autopilot, not really thinking about it. It's just we're so used to doing it. We've developed fixed neurological pathways. We just do it, and it's easy. Our brain wants to reserve brain energy so that we can do those things easily. Well, the same thing tends to happen when we end up in states of anxiety, depression, burnout, and stress. Countless steps happen. And our brains develop fixed neurological pathways in our brain. As I mentioned earlier, Romans 12:2 says that we can be that we are conformed to the pattern of this world. And that happens not just with our sinful choices, but with all of the things outside of the Garden of Eden that we were not meant to experience. So even these states of anxiety, our brain develops fixed pathways that lead us back to that again and again. And it's kind of similar to muscle memory, right? When you learned how to play a sport or play an instrument as a kid, if you did either of those, like playing the violin, the first time, it was probably really hard to figure out, but over time it got easier and easier to where you could play these things by heart. You didn't really have to think about it. You could play a song by heart. Same thing happens in our brain, which with our mental health struggles, which changes our brains, and it makes it difficult to change these patterns we get stuck in. But the good news is the rest of that verse in Romans 12:2 says we can be transformed by the renewing of our minds. New pathways in our brain can be developed according to neuroscience research. As the psalmist asks in Psalm 43:5, "Why are you downcast, O my soul?" We can do the same, getting to know ourselves, getting to know our past, our struggles. We can question our struggles rather than simply condemning them. We can start to understand our patterns. And by doing that, we can take steps to overcome, to heal, and to respond differently. But it starts with questioning those and self-awareness. So in this 8 steps to improve your mental health guide, free guide you can get at resolutionmovement.org/2025, we've got this diagram called the mental health matrix, and it explores these 4 core stages that lead to a challenging incident with your mental health. And so the stages are, I'll just go through them. First is the activating event. The activating event. This is a situation or a circumstance that produces distress within you. It could be just a place that it reminds you of a painful memory. It could be hurt you experience, a conversation with someone, experiencing criticism, somebody not showing up in the present when you needed them to, somebody not affirming a feeling or experience and kind of dismissing and downplaying that. It could be thinking about an upcoming event or interaction. You know, for me in the past, thinking about these upcoming speaking events that I shared about, that would produce anxiety in me. That was an activating event. And the second core stage that happens is we move from that into a past painful experience being triggered. A past painful experience being triggered. Something that reminds us of this present activating event. So that activating event brings this distressing experience from the past, and your brain and your body instantly recognizes it. It could be a past experience of abuse, embarrassment, neglect, panic. You know, maybe you had high anxiety or a panic attack in a certain location, and so when you go near that location or back into it, it will bring with it the past memories and activates that event all over again. And your brain and body have trouble recognizing that that was the past, not the present. And that leads to the third thing, is that your brain and body have responses to these things. Your brain and body feel that that past distressing experience is happening right now in the future or in the present. And it starts to respond. And so that activates things such as a dysregulated nervous system, tension in our body. It also activates old false beliefs, old lies we believe, like believing we're not safe, we're worthless, we're a reject, we're inadequate. And then we go into the 4th core stage, where we have this mental health incident. The result is a period of anxiety, rage, panic, depression, exhaustion, high stress, acute distress. And so we can go through all these 4 stages in a matter of seconds, or it can take weeks before we end up in the 4th stage, having that mental health incident. So how do we begin reversing these autopilot patterns we have of going through these 4 core stages in the mental health matrix? Well, we start bringing awareness to it. We begin noticing when it is happening, and we start intervening. And then we start taking steps to calm our brains and our bodies. We do deep breathing. We look at 5 things we can see, 4 things we can touch, 1 thing we can smell. We go through these different things that help us be grounded in the present. We start taking our thoughts captive and telling ourselves the truth that we are safe, that we are in control of our brains and our bodies. We use practices like redirecting our thoughts, telling ourselves what actually is true, journaling through that experience, deep breathing, mindfulness, and through that, our brains actually can rewire and our bodies will become more regulated and our mental health challenges will lessen. They'll start going down, and as we intervene in those 4 core stages, we'll see change in our life and freedom. And the 4th step is to connect in meaningful ways with God and others every day. Connect in meaningful ways with God and others every day. You know, research shows that loneliness is as deadly as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And so how is it that we are more connected than ever, yet lonelier than ever? Well, it's because loneliness is not caused due to a lack of friends. It's caused by a lack of meaningful connection with other people. We are so connected, yet we have such surface level relationships a lot of the time. And so loneliness is cured by meaningful connection as we talk with people about our hopes, our fears, our dreams, as we talk about the challenges we're experiencing, as we experience the affirmation of our feelings and the pain we're going through, as we're known and understood and loved. That starts to heal us of loneliness because it causes us to feel known and understood and not alone, but like we belong, because we do. And so as Bessel van der Kolk says in his book, The Body Keeps the Score, being able to feel safe with other people is probably the single most important aspect of mental health. Safe connections are fundamental to meaningful and satisfying lives. And we see this in Ecclesiastes, that two are better than one, for they can help each other succeed. God didn't make us to experience loneliness. He created us to be known, loved, and accepted. He created us to need him and one another and to connect in meaningful ways by being vulnerable, by talking about how we're really doing, by experiencing empathy from other people, talking about things that truly matter. And many times we think we've connected with God throughout the day because we had a quiet time, we read the Bible, but how many times do we do that and not really commune with God and not really talk with him, not really sit with him and experience him as an actual being? How oftentimes was it just going through our prayer list? God isn't someone simply to learn about. He's somebody to be deeply known. And so I hope all of these 4 steps encouraged you. I believe so much if you start implementing these in your life that your mental health will improve significantly. And again, these 4 steps were taken from our guide, 8 steps to improve your mental health, which you can get totally free at resolutionmovement.org/2025. So thanks for tuning in today. I also want to encourage you to join our Discord community. We've got over 500 people in the Discord community. You can find out more at resolutionmovement.org/join. But in there, we're seeing people pray for one another, support one another, going through devotionals together on things like anxiety, depression, porn use, lies we believe about God. And as people are supporting one another, we're seeing freedom take place in people's lives. So join the Discord community.